I've been a ranger in Blackwood National Park for nearly a decade. I've encountered my fair share of strange and unsettling things in these woods, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to face. It all started when we received a call regarding a hiker who had gone missing. Sarah Thompson, a seasoned outdoorswoman, had embarked on a solo camping trip deep in the heart of the park. When she failed to return after several days, we organized a search party to comb the woods, but there was no sign of her. It was as if the forest had opened up and swallowed her whole. The search continued for days, with no leads or trace of Sarah. The longer she remained missing, the more of a feeling of unease overtook me. The other rangers shared the same sentiment, and we couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong in these woods. As the days turned into nights, the forest seemed to change. There was an overwhelming sense that something was watching us. The once familiar sounds of wildlife had gone eerily silent, and the wind would cry through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. I was on the night shift when I first encountered it. I had been patrolling the area near Sarah's last known location, a remote part of the forest that was rarely visited by hikers. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. I walked cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw it, a figure hunched over by the edge of a clearing. At first, I thought it could be Sarah, but as I approached, I saw that this thing wasn't even human. The figure was gaunt and emaciated, its skin stretched tightly over its bones. Its eyes were sunken and hollow, and its hair hung in greasy tangles. "Sarah," I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, only a low, guttural growl. I raised my flashlight to get a better look, and that's when I saw the creature's face contorted in a grotesque snarl, its teeth sharp and yellowed. As I approached, it raised on its hind legs, standing nearly 7 feet tall. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a twisted and nightmarish visage that made my blood run cold. Without thinking, I drew my sidearm and aimed it at the creature, my hands trembling. "Stay back," I warned, my voice shaking. The creature let out an inhuman shriek and darted into the shadows, disappearing. I was paralyzed with fear, my hands shaking, unable to catch my breath. I don't know how long I stood frozen there before I finally got my wits about me. I turned and ran as fast as I could, not stopping until I reached the ranger's station, my lungs burning by the time I got back. I couldn't bring myself to tell the others what I'd seen. There was no way they would believe me. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew that it had to be connected to Sarah's disappearance. As the days passed, my dread and fear of the woods grew. I couldn't get the image of that horrible thing out of my mind, and everything inside me screamed not to go back into that forest. But I knew I had to. I owed it to Sarah and her family. One night, as we continued our search, we stumbled upon a cave deep within the woods that I had never seen before. It was a dark, foreboding place, and I knew that we were getting closer to the truth. We entered cautiously with our flashlights and firearms drawn. The air was thick with a foul, putrid odor that made my stomach churn. And then, as our beams of light swept across the cavern walls, we saw them bones. Piles of bones, human and animal, strewn about the cave. This was the feeding ground for the creature that had been stalking these woods. If Sarah was anywhere within these woods, this would be the place. As we ventured deeper into the cave, the air grew cold and the walls seemed to close in around us. I could feel the presence of the creature, a malevolent force that hung in the air like a thick fog. Then we saw it, hunched in the corner of the cave, its eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. It was a grotesque and nightmarish creature, its body twisted and contorted, its limbs elongated and gaunt. The creature let out a shrill scream, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. Before we even had time to react, it darted toward us with a feral look in its eyes. We opened fire, our bullets finding their mark, but they did not affect the ungodly beast. The horrible thing landed on one of my fellow rangers, its jaws snapping shut with a sickening crunch. The ranger's screams echoed through the cave as he was dragged into the darkness, his cries for help growing fainter and fainter until they were swallowed by the abyss. We fled the cave, our hearts pounding with fear and grief. When we got back to the ranger station, we had to have a long discussion about what we needed to do next. How would Sarah's family, or the family of the ranger for that matter, react if we told them a monster had taken their loved ones? In the end, we knew that we had no choice but to keep this buried. Could I live with myself, knowing that that horrible thing was waiting in the woods for its next victim? The years have passed, and I've had to live with the decision we made. The victims' families never received closure, and I never saw that creature again. In my time patrolling the forest, I've never found that cave again. But on cold, clear nights, if I listen closely, I can still hear its distant, shrill cries, and I know that it's still out there.
Something's wrong with Mom and Dad. A few nights ago, as I was setting the table for dinner, I noticed that they were acting strange. They had a distant look in their eyes, and they had smiles frozen on their faces that seemed just slightly too wide. As me and my little brother ate our dinner, theirs remained untouched. "Is everything okay, Mom?" I asked, trying not to let the worry creep into my voice. "Oh dear, everything's fine," she replied, but her voice held an odd monotone quality that sent shivers down my spine. Jake, always perceptive for his age, piped up from his seat, "Mom, you don't look like..." "Mom." We both stared at her, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw her eyes flash with something unnatural. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that vacant expression once more. Dad cleared his throat, breaking the eerie silence. "Kids, we're just tired from work. Don't worry about us." But we did worry. Over the next few weeks, our parents' behavior grew even stranger. They stopped eating altogether. Their bodies became gaunt, and their skin turned as white as chalk. Soon, I had a hard time even looking at them. At night, I would hear them walking around the house, muttering to each other. I don't think they sleep anymore. One night, I woke up unable to move. I could look around me, but my body didn't seem to work, and it was hard to breathe. My eyes darted around the room as the panic inside me grew. That's when I saw my parents standing over me. Their wide, unnatural smiles sent terror deep inside me. I had to try and calm myself to steady my breathing. I drew the deepest breath that I could to force a scream. That was enough to shake me back awake. My room was empty, with no sign of Mom and Dad. Could it have been a dream? I breathed a sigh of relief, but my calm was short-lived. I heard a low murmuring outside my bedroom door and could see shadows cast over the threshold. They were right outside my room. I spent the rest of the night wide awake with my knees pulled to my chest. Soon, Mom and Dad wouldn't let us leave the house anymore, not even to go to school. When we asked them why, they would just say that it was a sick day. We were running out of food in the house, and I knew I had to save myself and my little brother. At night, Jake would run to my room, and we would spend the night with the door locked, huddled together under the covers. We didn't know where our real parents were, but we knew that these things living in our house were not them. At that point, they barely even looked human anymore. They had become even more thin, Their bodies had stretched and distorted disgustingly. We had to escape. We couldn't just run. I can't explain it. But I knew no matter how far we ran, that these things would find us. So one evening, while our parents were in the basement, I took a butcher knife from the kitchen, gathered my courage, and ventured down. I told Jake to wait by the front door. We wouldn't have much time to run. With trembling hands, we pushed open the door. Mom and Dad turned to us, their eyes black as ink, their smiles covering the entire width of their faces. They spoke to me. "Come join us, child," they hissed, their voices echoing with a sinister resonance. I stifled my tears as I approached those horrible things. Dad's arms were outstretched, as if he were offering a hug, and I quickly made my way to him, hiding the knife behind my back. When I was close enough, I thrust the blade into the monster's gut as hard and fast as I could. A thick, black, syrupy ooze poured out of its stomach. His body wilted like a flower and crumbled into ashes in front of me. Mom let out a long, ear-piercing shriek before lunging for me. I ran for the steps and bolted out of the basement, making my way to the front door. But Jake was gone. Unable to stop from crying, I screamed out for him. We had to get out now. Mom was on top of me in no time. She clutched my throat tight with her elongated hand, lifting me off the ground. She snarled and hissed in my face, her breath smelling of sulfur. Just as I was beginning to lose consciousness, her grip suddenly loosened, and I dropped to the ground. Jake was behind her and had driven the fire poker through her torso. Mom's body crumbled to ash just like Dad's had. The nightmare was over. I had no idea what the future would be like for us. I didn't know where we would go or how we would survive. But I knew that if these things had made their way into our house, then there must be more of them out there. And it would be up to us to find them and make sure they don't claim any more victims.
I couldn't escape my past, no matter how hard I tried. Witness protection had given me a new name, a new identity, and a new life, but it couldn't erase the memories of the things I've done. My name was Jimmy Romano, but most people knew me as the Butcher. If you had a guy that was being a problem for you, I was the guy you'd call. If you were in the life, you better pray that you never get a visit from me. I had been tasked with cleaning up some loose ends after a heist gone bad. The feds were closing in and the bosses wanted to cut any ties between themselves and the robbery. I took care of nearly a dozen guys who'd been involved, but then it dawned on me that I was the last loose end. I was left with no choice. I'd betrayed the family, turned state's witness, and landed myself in this godforsaken town in the middle of nowhere. I was supposed to be safe here, but safety was a relative term when you had the blood of men you once called brothers on your hands. I did my best to move on with my life. I got a job at a small, run-down diner on the outskirts of town. The locals didn't ask questions, and I kept to myself, making sure not to draw any attention. But no matter how I tried, I couldn't escape my past. It started with subtle things, a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the corner of my eye. I told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, a side effect of the guilt that gnawed at my soul. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. One night, as I lay in bed, right on the cusp of sleep, I heard a voice, low and menacing, like gravel scraping against sandpaper. A single word, Butcher, it whispered. I was jolted awake and sprang up in my bed. There was no one there, just the dim glow of the streetlight outside. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, but the voice returned night after night, each time growing louder, more insistent. You can't escape what you've done, it hissed. We're coming for you. Then, one night, as I was leaving the diner after working a double shift, I saw someone standing by my car. He was out of place in this town, tall in $1,000 suit. It was hard to make out in the darkness, but I noticed the blood that ran down his face. I knew this man. This was Frankie Carbone. He flashed me a sickening smile and shot me a finger gun like we used to do when we were kids. I closed my eyes tight, telling myself that it wasn't real. There was no way it could be. When I opened my eyes again, there was nobody there. My heart raced as I made my way to my car and drove home. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. I started seeing the men I had whacked everywhere I went. They would be at a distance at first. I'd see them across the street, on the far side of the room, when I'd go to the bar at the end of the aisle in the grocery store. All of their mutilated bodies bore the signature of the work I'd performed on them. I couldn't take it. Everywhere I went, I felt that I was being followed, being watched. As the days went by, they got closer and closer. I would try to distract myself. I would watch TV at night, pretending like I didn't see the twisted bodies standing right outside my living room window. I would drink all night and fall asleep with my pistol in my hand. One night, I woke up completely paralyzed, the room filled with an icy chill. I could see my breath in the air, and then, in the dim light, I saw them all around my bed. Blood and gristle dripped from their horrible forms. They hissed in a chorus of voices, their words a jumbled mess of anger and betrayal. "We trusted you, Butcher. We were family." I screamed, and the figures dissipated, leaving me trembling in my bed. I couldn't take much more of this. Soon, I wasn't leaving the house at all anymore. The voices of the dead kept getting louder and louder. I couldn't focus on anything anymore. It was all becoming too much. Finally, I faced the inevitable of what I had to do. I sat down and wrote a letter to all the families that I destroyed. I confessed to all my horrible crimes. I begged forgiveness. Then I left my house for the first time in weeks and made my way to a hotel downtown. Now I'm on the roof, standing on the edge, the spirits of my victims standing right behind me, incessantly chanting about my sins. But it will all be over soon. In 2 seconds, I'll finally find peace.